"Who?" The single syllable hung in the air of Quasar's throne room, echoing off the vaulted obsidian ceilings. The alien tyrant froze in disbelief, his luminous purple eyes flashing with rage. A lone human, clad in mottled combat armor, stood defiantly before Quasar's onyx throne, unflinching even as the supreme leader of the Brunali Dominion surged to his feet. Pewit Eugene Green held his ground, meeting Quasar's furious gaze. The human's audacious taunt reverberated through the palace halls and across the planet Velos Prime, where the local populace huddled in fear, awaiting the cruel repercussions for this unthinkable act of defiance against their Brunali conquerors. Quasar, self-proclaimed master of the galaxy, found himself at a loss. In all his centuries of rule, across 100 conquered worlds, no one had ever dared mock him to his face. This impudent human, this mere soldier, had infiltrated the unassailable Brunali stronghold and casually uttered a single word that now threatened to unravel the intricate web of control Quasar had spun. As the tyrant's shock turned to raw, seething anger, the human offered a smirk and a mocking salute before darting back into the shadows as swiftly as he'd appeared. Bellowing for his guards, Quasar lashed out with a bolt of crackling techno-magic that scorched the floor where Green had stood moments before. News of Green's brazen exploits spread like wildfire through the downtrodden Velosian cities, carried in hurried whispers by those who yearned to throw off the yoke of their alien oppressors. The human's one-word challenge to Quasar's dominion took on a life of its own, a spark of rebellion that threatened to ignite a war and change the face of the galaxy forever. As Quasar's forces fanned out through the streets of the capital, Prit Green melted into the shadows of Kodaya Rex, the labyrinthine shantytown, a haphazard sprawl of ramshackle dwellings and narrow alleys, provided the perfect cover for a lone human operative on the run. Green moved swiftly and silently, his combat boots barely disturbing the dust as he navigated the twisting warrens with preternatural ease. It was as if some sixth sense guided him, allowing him to slip past Brunali patrols like a ghost. His uncanny abilities did not go unnoticed by the Velosian resistance cell operating in the heart of Kodaya Rex. Led by Axon Krell, a battle-hardened veteran of the Velosian military, the rebels had been waging a desperate guerrilla campaign against their alien occupiers for months. When Green first stumbled into their hidden safe house, Axon had been wary. The human was an unknown quantity, a potential liability in a fight where the slightest misstep could spell doom for the entire cell. But as Green proved his worth, time and again, outmaneuvering Brunali forces with a skill that bordered on prescience, Axon's distrust slowly gave way to grudging respect. Under Axon's tutelage, Green learned the secret ways of Kodaya Rex, the hidden tunnels and bolt holes that honeycombed the shantytown, providing a vital lifeline for the resistance. Together, they staged increasingly daring raids against Brunali supply depots and command posts, striking hard and fast before fading back into the urban jungle. As word of the humans' exploits spread, more and more Velosians rallied to the rebel cause. Among them was Zara Krell, Axon's quick-witted daughter, whose mastery of Brunali computer systems proved invaluable. With Zara's help, Green infiltrated and sabotaged the alien sensor nets, allowing the resistance to operate undetected right under Quasar's nose. In the heat of their shared struggle, a spark ignited between Green and Zara. What began as a partnership of necessity soon blossomed into something deeper as they bonded over their common cause. Stealing moments together between missions, they planned their most audacious gambit yet. Operation Blindside, a series of synchronized attacks designed to cripple key Brunali installations across Velos Prime. As the Resistance laid the groundwork for their master stroke, another player entered the game. Commander Jenna Norwood, leading an elite Earth covert ops team, made planetfall in a stealth landing craft. Her orders were clear: locate Green and provide any support necessary to fan the flames of rebellion against the Protectorate. But Quasar had locked Velos Prime down tight. With a total communications blackout in effect, and Brunali troops scouring every inch of the capital, Norwood was forced to retreat to the rugged highlands south of the city to regroup. There, a clash with a Protectorate patrol left no doubt as to the lengths Quasar would go to crush the burgeoning revolt. Back in the capital, the tyrant's retaliation was as swift as it was brutal. Volosian civilians were rounded up en masse, subjected to horrific public interrogations in a bid to root out rebel sympathizers. The streets ran red as thousands were tortured and summarily executed, including Zara's own brother. A loss that only hardened her perseverance to see Quasar fall. The Galactic Council issued a formal denunciation of the Protectorate's atrocities, but Quasar remained defiant. In a fiery speech, he vowed not only to quash the Volosian uprising, but to bring the fight to Earth itself. The specter of open war loomed between the two superpowers, with the fate of the stars hanging in the balance. On Velos Prime, the stage was set for a final reckoning. Green and the rebels, Norwood and her covert team, Quasar and his Protectorate forces, all the pieces were in motion. In the wretched warrens of Coda Rex, the first tremors of a conflict that would shake the very stars were about to erupt. The calm before the storm settled over Coda Rex like a suffocating blanket. Green crouched in the shadows of a dilapidated warehouse, his eyes scanning the empty streets. Beside him, Zara's fingers flew over a handheld terminal, decrypting the latest intelligence intercepts. "We've got movement," she whispered, her voice tight. "Large force mobilizing near the spaceport. Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen before." Green's teeth gritted. "Quasar's making his play. We need to—" A deafening explosion rocked the ground, cutting off his words. The sky lit up with an eerie purple glow as a barrage of energy bolts rained down on the shantytown. Through the settling dust, Green caught sight of them. Towering figures encased in sleek obsidian armor, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Shock troops," Zara breathed, her face pale in the pulsing light of her terminal. "They're tearing through our outer defenses like they're not even there." Green keyed his comm. "Axon, we need to fall back. Regroup at—" Static crackled in his ear, punctuated by the staccato of weapons fire and screams. When Axon's voice finally came through, it was strained and barely audible over the chaos. "Negative. We can't let them take the armor shipment. It's our only shot at evening the odds." Green hesitated, torn between the mission and the lives of his comrades. Zara's hand on his arm steadied him. "We have to try," she said, her eyes fierce with tenacity. They moved swiftly through the labyrinthine alleys, dodging patrols and skirting pockets of intense fighting. The resistance was putting up a valiant effort, but they were hopelessly outmatched against the augmented Brunali forces. As they neared the warehouse where the armor shipment was stashed, a familiar figure stumbled out of the smoke. Toran, one of Axon's most trusted lieutenants. His face was ashen, eyes wide with panic. "It's a trap," he gasped. "They knew we were coming. Axon, he's—" Before Torn could finish, a bolt of crackling energy lanced through the air, catching him square in the chest. He crumpled without a sound. From the shadows emerged a hulking figure, his armor more elaborate than the others. General Crux, Quasar's infamous enforcer. "I must admit," he drawled, his voice distorted by his helm, "I expected more of a challenge from the vaunted human operative." Green's mind raced, assessing options, looking for an angle, but Zara was quicker. She lobbed a plasma grenade, the explosion temporarily blinding Crux's sensors. In that split second, Green grabbed her arm, and they ran. They found Axon slumped against a wall, blood seeping from a gaping wound in his side. His eyes flickered open as Green knelt beside him. "Get out!" he wheezed. "Not without you," Green insisted, but Axon's iron grip on his wrist stopped him. "Listen," Axon rasped. "There's still a chance. Find Janakari, my old XO. He has contacts in the fleet. If anyone can turn this around—" A racking cough cut off his words. "Dad, please," Zara pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Axon's eyes locked onto Green's. "Promise me. Lead them. Finish what we started." Green nodded, his throat tight. "I promise." With a final shuddering breath, Axon went still. Zara choked back a sob, but there was no time to mourn. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed nearby. "We have to go," Green said, gently pulling Zara to her feet. "Your father's sacrifice won't be in vain." As they melted into the shadows of Coda Rex, leaving behind the carnage and the fallen, Green's mind was already plotting their next move. Find Admiral Akari, rally the fleet, and somehow, against all challenges, turn the tide of this war. Behind them, Coda Rex burned, the screams of the dying carried on the acrid wind. But ahead lay a glimmer of hope. If only they could reach it in time. Green's comm crackled to life, Admiral Akari's voice cutting through the chaos. "Green, we have a shot at the Vanguard. It's now or never." Zara's eyes widened. "The flagship? But what about—" "We have to go," Green said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his gut. "It's our only chance to turn this around." They sprinted through the burning ruins of Coda Rex, dodging energy blasts and collapsing structures. Commander Norwood and her team rendezvoused with them at the edge of the shantytown, faces grim and weapons at the ready. "Let's move," Norwood barked, leading the way to their concealed transport. The journey to the orbital shipyards was a blur of tense silence and furtive glances at sensor readouts. As they approached, the massive form of the Vanguard loomed before them, a gleaming behemoth of Velocian engineering. "Umbilical access corridor, starboard side," Akari's voice guided them. "My people will create a diversion. You have one shot at this." Green nodded to Norwood, who deftly maneuvered their craft into position. The airlock hissed open, and they plunged into the sterile white corridor. The first Brunali patrol caught them off guard. Energy bolts sizzled past Green's ear as he dove for cover. Norwood's team returned fire, their precise shots dropping 2 aliens before the rest could react. "Push forward!" Green shouted, leading the charge down the corridor. They fought their way through the shipyard's maze-like structure, each firefight more intense than the last. Green's armor was scorched and dented, his breathing labored as they finally reached the Vanguard's main hangar. The battle for the hangar was pure chaos. Akari's loyalists clashed with the Brunali crew, energy weapons and hand-to-hand combat blurring into a frenzied melee. Green spotted an opening and signaled to Norwood. "Bridge, now!" he yelled over the din. They sprinted across the hangar floor, dodging stray fire and leaping over fallen combatants. The ship's internal sensors were in disarray, allowing them to slip through to the command deck with minimal resistance. As the bridge doors hissed open, Green's team surged forward. The Brunali officers barely had time to react before they were overwhelmed. In moments, the nerve center of the Vanguard was under their control. Zara's fingers flew over the unfamiliar controls. "We've got incoming. Crux's forces, moving to board." Green's mind raced. "Norwood, get those weapons online. We need to hit Quasar's palace before—" The ship rocked violently as the first wave of Brunali boarders made contact. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Disruptors charged," Norwood called out. "Fire," Green ordered. The Vanguard's main batteries unleashed a devastating barrage. On the interface, they watched as Quasar's orbital stronghold shuddered under the assault. Its force field flickered and died, leaving the palace exposed. For a heart-stopping moment, Green thought they'd succeeded. Then a burst of light signaled Quasar's escape. "Teleported," Zara spat. "The bastard got away." Before they could regroup, the ship's internal comms erupted with frantic chatter. Crux's shock troops had breached multiple decks, overwhelming Akari's loyalists through sheer numbers and raw firepower. Green gripped the arms of the command chair, his fingers tightening. They were trapped, outgunned, and rapidly running out of options. But as the sounds of battle drew closer to the bridge, a new transmission cut through the mayhem. "This is Admiral Akari," the grizzled voice rang out. "All units, initiate Operation Firestorm. I repeat, Operation Firestorm is a go." Green exchanged a look with Norwood. Whatever Akari had planned, it was their last hope. As Crux's forces closed in, they prepared for what might be their final stand. Green's fingers tightened on the command chair as Akari's voice faded. "Operation Firestorm," he muttered, exchanging a grim look with Norwood. "Whatever it is, we're out of options." The bridge doors buckled under a thunderous impact. Zara's eyes widened as she monitored the internal sensors. "Multiple breaches. They're—" Her words were cut short as the doors exploded inward, revealing towering figures in gleaming black armor. Energy bolts sizzled through the air, forcing Green and his team to dive for cover. "Fall back!" Green shouted, returning fire as they retreated toward the emergency access tunnels. The acrid smell of ozone filled the air as energy weapons discharged all around them. They fought their way through the ship's corridors, the relentless advance of Zorgax's Praetorian Guard pushing them steadily back. Green's armor was scorched and dented, his breathing labored as they finally reached the zero-gravity shipyards. The vast expanse of the orbital facility stretched before them, a dizzying array of scaffolding and partially constructed vessels. Green activated his mag boots, gesturing for the others to do the same. "Spread out," he ordered. "Use the cover. Pick your shots." The shipyard erupted into chaos as the two forces clashed. Green's rebels fought with desperate intensity, but they were hopelessly outmatched against the cybernetically enhanced Praetorians. A nearby explosion sent a cloud of debris hurtling toward them. Green grabbed Zara, pulling her behind a twisted sheet of metal just as a jagged shard whistled past. "We can't keep this up," Zara gasped, her face pale beneath the grime and sweat. Green's calm crackled to life. "Green, this is Akari. We're out of time. I'm proposing we overload the Vanguard's trans-warp drive." "What?" Green's blood ran cold. "The civilian casualties will be catastrophic," Akari finished grimly. "But it's our only shot at taking out Zorgax's entire orbital fleet. We do this, or we lose everything." Green's mind raced, weighing the impossible choice before him. The sounds of battle raged around them, punctuated by the screams of the dying. "Do it," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "Acknowledged. Beginning overload sequence." A deafening roar drowned out Akari's next words as a massive figure crashed through a nearby bulkhead. General Crux, his techno-armor jam, packed with weapons, strode toward them with implacable purpose. "Green!" Norwood's voice cut through the chaos. "We need to move now!" They sprinted across the shipyard, dodging energy blasts and debris. Green's heart pounded as he saw their destination. A battered skiff, its hull scarred, but engines still intact. As they piled into the small craft, a blinding flash erupted behind them. Green turned to see the Vanguard's bridge engulfed in flames. Akari and his crew lost in an instant. "He's disabled the drive overload," Zara reported, her fingers flying over the skiff's controls. "We've lost our shot at the singularity bomb." Crux's towering form loomed before them, weapons charging with an ominous whine. Green's mind raced, searching for a solution. "The particle beam cannon," he said suddenly. "If we can divert all power to it—" Norwood nodded, understanding instantly. "I'll pilot. You man the firing controls." The skiff lurched forward, accelerating toward the cybernetic juggernaut. Green's hands flew over the makeshift weapons console, redirecting every scrap of power to the Vanguard's spinal cannon. Time seemed to slow as they closed the distance. Green saw Crux's arms rise, preparing to unleash his full arsenal upon them. With a silent prayer, Green fired. A blinding stream of energy erupted from the Vanguard, slamming into Crux's armored hide. The cyborg staggered, his own attack going wide. "Again!" Green shouted, pouring everything they had into a sustained barrage. Norwood's piloting was flawless, weaving through the debris field to keep them just ahead of Crux's counterattacks. With each pass, Green's relentless assault chipped away at the Enforcer's defenses. A hair-thin crack appeared in Crux's armor, barely visible amidst the chaos. It was all the opening they needed. "Now!" Green roared. Norwood sent their skiff into a steep dive, aimed directly at the towering cyborg. At the last possible moment, she pulled up, the skiff's belly scraping against Crux's chest plate. The impact sent them tumbling, alarms blaring as systems failed across the board. But it had the desired effect. Crux's armor split wide open, exposing his vulnerable core. Green didn't hesitate. He poured every last ounce of power into the cannon, unleashing a sustained burst directly into the breach. Crux's scream was unlike anything Green had ever heard. Part human, part machine, all agony. Arcs of energy coursed over the cyborg's form as he began to disintegrate. "This isn't over, human," Crux's voice boomed, distorting as his body tore itself apart. Zorgax will... His final words were lost as he vanished in a blinding flash of light. For a moment there was silence. Then reality came crashing back as Zara's voice cut through the haze. "We've lost too many," she said, her tone grim. "Even with Crux gone, Zorgax's forces will overwhelm us." Green's shoulders sagged as the truth of her words sank in. They'd come so far, sacrificed so much, and still it wasn't enough. "There's only one option left," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the Vanguard's gleaming hull. "We finish what Akari started." Understanding dawned in Zara's eyes. "The trans-warp drive." Green nodded. "It's our last shot." As they maneuvered their battered skiff back toward the flagship, Green's mind raced. The cost would be unimaginable, but the alternative was unthinkable. With steadfast perseverance, he set to work, knowing that the fate of Velos Prime hung in the balance. The singularity bomb detonated with a silent flash, tearing reality asunder. Green shielded his eyes as the blinding energy engulfed Zorgax's armada. When the light faded, he gaped at the devastation. Where once hundreds of warships had loomed, now only twisted debris and expanding gases remained. "We did it," Zara breathed, her voice barely audible over the ringing in Green's ears. But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared as the skiff's sensors detected a massive energy surge. "Wormhole signature," Norwood shouted. "It's Zorgax! He's escaping!" Green banged his hand against the console. "Can we track him?" Zara shook her head. "The Singularity's interference is too strong. He could be anywhere." Before they could regroup, a priority transmission cut through their comms. Admiral Akari's grim face appeared on the console. "Green, we have a situation," Akari said, his voice tight. "Zorgax's ground forces are mobilizing. They're calling themselves the Purification Legions, led by someone named Overlord Taxor." Green's blood ran cold as Akari relayed intel on the cybernetically enhanced shock troops pouring out of subterranean fortresses. Their mission, the complete annihilation of Velos Prime. The skiff shuddered as they re-entered the atmosphere. Green watched in horror as Purifier ships unleashed bioweapons and orbital strikes on population centers. Millions of lives snuffed out in an instant. They barely managed to land at a hidden resistance base before Taxor's forces tracked them down. The air filled with the whine of energy weapons and the screams of the dying as Green and Zara fled through smoke-choked corridors. "This way!" a gruff voice called out. A scarred Velosian fighter waved them toward a concealed exit. "I'm Dratz! Come on, we need to move!" As they sprinted through the ruins of what was once a thriving city, Green's comm crackled to life. Commander Norwood's voice cut through the chaos. "Green, this is critical," she said. "Earth Command is mobilizing the fleet. We have one shot at this. You need to disable Zorgax's wormhole generator inside his central citadel. If we can't stop him from escaping, Earth will implement Armageddon Protocol." Green's stomach churned. "They'd destroy the entire planet? To contain the purifiers? In a heartbeat." He exchanged a grim look with Zara. There was no choice. "We'll do it," Green said, "but we'll need a diversion." "Already on it," Norwood replied. "I'm coordinating orbital strikes with Akari's hit squads. It should buy you some time." Draz led them to a hidden entrance to the vast tunnel network beneath the city. "I can guide you through," he said, "but it won't be easy. The tunnels are crawling with Purifier patrols." They hadn't made it far when the distinctive whine of Purifier weapons echoed through the tunnels. Green dove for cover as energy bolts sizzled past. "Contact!" he shouted, returning fire. The firefight was brutal and swift. When it was over, Dratz lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. "No," Green muttered, kneeling beside the fallen Velosian. "Hold on, we'll get you help." Draz grasped Green's arm, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Listen," he wheezed. "My mate Vera, our daughter Lisa, they're in a pacifist enclave deeper in the tunnels. Please, find them. Get them out." "I will," Green vowed. "I promise." Draz's eyes glazed over, his final breath escaping in a soft sigh. Green stood, his lips pursed. He turned to Zara, perseverance etched on his face. "We keep moving," he said. "We find Drass's family. We stop Zorgax. Whatever it takes." They pressed deeper into the tunnels, the distant sounds of battle echoing behind them. Ahead lay the heart of Zorgax's fortified citadel, and with it, their last chance to save Velos Prime. Green's lungs burned as he and Zara sprinted through the twisting tunnels, the echoes of battle fading behind them. They emerged into the cool night air, greeted by the sight of Admiral Akari's fleet hovering above the ruins of the Velosian capital. "We made it," Zara gasped, her eyes wide as she surveyed the assembled warships. Green's comm crackled to life. "Green, this is Akari. Report to the command center immediately." Inside the makeshift war room, Green found himself face to face with both Admiral Akari and Commander Norwood. The air thrummed with tension as they laid out their desperate plan. "We have one shot at this," Norwood said, her finger tracing a holographic display of Zorgax's citadel. "My Earth battle group will hammer their orbital defenses while Akari's ground forces breach the perimeter." Green nodded, his eyes hardened. "I'll lead the assault team." Zara stepped forward. "I'm going too." As the final preparations were made, Green stood before a makeshift communications array. He took a deep breath, then began broadcasting across the system. "People of Velos, and all those oppressed by Zorgax's tyranny, the time has come. Rise up, fight back. Today, we reclaim our freedom." The response was immediate. Reports flooded in of uprisings on a dozen worlds, the Dominion's iron grip beginning to slip. Green's dropship plummeted through the atmosphere, trailing fire as it punched through the last of Zorgax's orbital defenses. The citadel loomed before them, a fortress of twisted metal and pulsing energy fields. 30 seconds to touchdown," the pilot shouted. Green felt Zara's hand grip his arm. He met her eyes, saw the purpose there, and nodded. The instant the dropship's doors opened, they were engulfed in chaos. Energy bolts sizzled past as Green and Zara led the charge, weaving through the smoldering wreckage of defensive turrets. They fought their way deeper into the citadel, the air thick with ozone and the screams of the dying. At a junction, an explosion sent Green and Zara tumbling down a side passage, cut off from the main assault force. "Akari, we're separated," Green barked into his comm. "We'll find another way to the throne room." They pressed on through winding corridors, dispatching pockets of royal guards with brutal efficiency. As they neared their target, the citadel trembled under the continued bombardment from orbit. Green and Zara burst through a set of ornate doors, weapons raised, and froze. There, upon a twisted throne of living metal, sat Zorgax. But it was the two figures kneeling before him that made Green's blood run cold. Vera and Lissa, the family he had sworn to protect, now hostages in the Tyrant's grasp. Zorgax's cybernetic eyes gleamed as he regarded the intruders. "Ah, the would-be heroes arrive at last, but I'm afraid you're too late." Green's mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare scenario. The fate of Velos, of the entire system, hung in the balance. Green's grip tightened on his weapon as he locked eyes with Zorgax. The Tyrant's metallic fingers curled around Lysa's throat, the young Velosian trembling in his grasp. "Drop your weapons," Zorgax hissed, his cybernetic eye glowing an ominous red, "or I crush her windpipe." Green's heart made. He exchanged a quick glance with Zara, then slowly lowered his rifle to the ground. Zara followed suit, her eyes never leaving Vera and Lissa. "How predictably noble," Zorgax sneered. With a flick of his wrist, he signaled his royal guard. Armored figures materialized from the shadows, surrounding Green and Zara. As energy cuffs snapped around his wrists, Green's mind raced. He hadn't come this far to fail now. "Big man," he spat, "hiding behind children and pacifists. Is that how you've held on to power all these years?" Zorgax's face contorted with rage. He released Lysa, stalking towards Green with murderous intent. "You dare mock me? I've crushed empires that would make your earth tremble." The Tyrant's hand crackled with techno-magic energy as he raised it towards Lissa. "Perhaps a demonstration of my power is in order." "My lord," a gravelly voice cut through the tension. Taxor, the Purifier Overlord, stepped forward. The pacifist may yet prove useful in rooting out the remaining rebel cells. Zorgax's hand wavered, then lowered. He turned to Green, lips curled in a sneer. Take them to the dungeons. I'll deal with them personally. Later. The cell was dank and cold, illuminated only by flickering bioluminescent fungi. Green paced restlessly, his mind working furiously. I'm sorry, Vera whispered, cradling Lisa close. We never meant to be used against you like this. Green's expression softened. This isn't your fault. I made a promise to your mate, and I intend to keep it. He locked eyes with Zara, a silent understanding passing between them. Green stumbled suddenly, clutching his stomach and retching violently. Guard! Zara shouted, pounding on the cell door. He needs medical attention. The door slid open, a masked purifier stepping inside. In an instant, Green sprang into action. His hand clamped over the guard's mouth as Zara delivered a precise strike to a neural cluster. The guard crumpled silently. Stay here, Green instructed Vera and Lissa as he donned the guard's armor. We'll come back for you once it's safe. Green and Zara slipped out during a patrol change, their borrowed uniforms allowing them to blend seamlessly with the Citadel's security. As they navigated twisting corridors, a burst of static erupted from Green's appropriated communicator. Strike force assembling, sanctuary location compromised. Green's blood ran cold. They've found Akari's position. We need to move. They quickened their pace, following signs for the central wormhole chamber. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a nightmarish scene. Taxor stood before a shimmering portal, barking orders at a contingent of elite purifiers. Move out! We'll crush these rebel scum once and for all! Green's eyes darted to the wormhole controls. A desperate plan formed in his mind. Cover me, he whispered to Zara. She nodded, hands crackling with barely suppressed energy. Green sprinted for the control panel, fingers flying over unfamiliar symbols. Warning klaxons blared as the wormhole's stable aperture began to fluctuate wildly. What's happening? Taxor roared, turning just in time to see Green. Intruders! But it was too late. The destabilized wormhole erupted in a maelstrom of energy, engulfing the purifier strike force. Their screams were cut short as they were atomized in the swirling vortex. Taxor bellowed in rage, charging towards Green with inhuman speed. A blast of techno-magic from Zara sent the purifier commander staggering backwards. Green, Zara shouted, the main generator. He didn't hesitate, hitting his fist into the emergency shutdown. The Citadel trembled as its primary power source went dark. Taxor lunged again, cybernetic claws extended. Zara met him head-on, her hands wreathed in crackling energy. The two grappled at the edge of the still-active portal. Zara, move! Green yelled, raising his weapon. She twisted at the last second, using Taxor's momentum against him. The purifier commander's eyes widened in shock as he tumbled into the unstable wormhole, vanishing in a flash of light. Green wasted no time transmitting coordinates to the Earth fleet. This is Green. Zorgax's defenses are down. The Citadel is vulnerable. Deploy ground forces now. As alarms blared throughout the complex, Green turned to Zara. Her eyes blazed with perseverance as the distant sound of dropships filled the air. Ready for round two? He asked. Zara's lips curled into a fierce grin. Let's finish this. They moved swiftly through the darkened corridors, the Citadel's emergency lighting casting eerie shadows. Distant explosions shook the structure as Earth's ground forces breached the outer defenses. Green and Zara rounded a corner to find Admiral Akari and Commander Norwood leading a mixed squad of human and Velocian rebels. Green, Zara, Norwood called out. Status report. Wormhole generator disabled, Green said, his voice terse. Taxor's been neutralized. Akari nodded grimly. Good work. Now we hunt down Zorgax. A high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by an ominous rumbling. Zara's eyes widened as she decrypted a burst of encoded chatter on her stolen communicator. Zorgax has activated the Citadel's self-destruct sequence, she announced, her voice tight. If those warheads detonate, all life on Velos Prime will be eradicated. Green's eyes hardened. We need to get to the central reactor core. Now! They assembled a strike team on the move, Green leading them through maintenance tunnels and service conduits. The Citadel's layout was a maze, but Green's unorthodox route allowed them to bypass the heaviest concentrations of enemy forces. As they neared the reactor level, a massive figure stepped out of the shadows. Commander Ziller, Zorgax's cyborg enforcer, stood before them. His augmented body bristled with weaponry. "You will go no further," Zillor intoned, his voice a metallic growl. Green's mind raced. They couldn't afford a prolonged engagement. His eyes fell on a dormant battle droid in a nearby alcove. "Norwood, cover me!" he shouted, sprinting towards the machine. As energy blasts filled the air, Green activated the experimental droid. Its photoreceptors flared to life, sensors locking onto Ziller. "Engage primary threat," Green commanded. The battle droid launched itself at Ziller, buying precious seconds. Norwood seized the opportunity, unleashing a barrage of concentrated fire that staggered the cyborg commander. "Go!" Norwood yelled to Green. "We'll hold him here!" Green nodded, leading Zara and a handful of rebels deeper into the Citadel's core. They fought their way through dwindling pockets of resistance, time slipping away with each passing moment. They burst into the central reactor chamber to find Zorgax hunched over a control panel, fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Two of Green's Xerian allies, Jor and Lexa, didn't hesitate. They hurled themselves at the Tyrant, grappling with his augmented form. "Zara, the detonation controls!" Green shouted. She was already moving, her hands a blur as she worked to sabotage the world-killer bombs. Zorgax roared in fury, his cybernetic enhancements allowing him to throw off Jor and Lexa. The Xerians lay motionless on the ground, their sacrifice buying the precious seconds needed. "Too late," Zara announced, her voice heavy with relief. "Detonation sequence aborted." Zorgax's eyes blazed with hate. "You think this ends here?" he snarled. Reality itself seemed to warp around him as he summoned crackling energies. "I'll erase this miserable planet from existence." The air hummed with power as Zorgax tore open rifts in space-time. Green felt the fabric of reality straining, threatening to unravel. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind, searching for something. There, a presence vast and ancient, the planet itself. "Ryuz," Green whispered, calling out to the Xerian shaman. "I need your help." Green felt a surge of energy course through him as Reyes responded, connecting him to Velos Prime's bioelectric field. He became a conduit, channeling the planet's power to counter Zorgax's entropic assault. The two forces clashed, reality itself buckling under the strain. Green's body trembled, pushed to its limits as he fought to contain Zorgax's rage-fueled onslaught. Just as he felt himself beginning to falter, Zara's hands gripped his shoulders. Her presence stabilized the bond, strengthening the connection to Velos Prime. With a final surge of effort, Green redirected Zorgax's own power back upon him. The Tyrant's eyes widened in shock as his rift collapsed, engulfing him in a cascading implosion of fractured space-time. When the energy dissipated, Zorgax was gone, not dead but scattered across an infinite regression of pocket dimensions, forever removed from their reality. Green sagged to his knees, exhausted. Zara helped him to his feet as Norwood's voice crackled over the comm. "Green, report. What's your status?" He took a deep breath, looking out over the war-torn landscape of Velos Prime. "It's over," he said. "Zorgax has been neutralized." As the fighting died down and the enormity of what had transpired began to sink in, Green realized their ordeal was far from finished. The real challenge lay ahead, forging a lasting peace between two vastly different civilizations. He exchanged a weary glance with Zara. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The dust settled over Velos Prime, but the air remained thick with tension. Green stood atop a crumbling citadel spire, surveying the ravaged landscape below. Plumes of smoke rose from still smoldering craters, while makeshift camps dotted the periphery. The price of liberation had been steep. "Quite a view," Commander Norwood said, stepping up beside him. "Hard to believe it's finally over." Green's expression resolute. "Is it?" In the weeks that followed, as human forces prepared for withdrawal, the cracks in Velos Prime's newfound freedom began to show. Green and Zara found themselves thrust into the role of mediators, shuttling between factions with increasingly disparate visions for the planet's future. We cannot simply erase centuries of Brunali influence, Rayuz argued during a tense council meeting. Our cultures have become intertwined, for better or worse. Intertwined? A hardline Zyrian named Kazvor spat. You mean corrupted. Every trace of their taint must be purged. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Green watched helplessly as extremism took root, fueled by generations of fear and resentment. The situation reached a boiling point when a series of explosions rocked the human evacuation ships. Panicked voices filled the comm channels as Green raced to the spaceport. It's Taxer, Zara said, her face grim as she examined security footage. He's back. The exiled Purifier's return ignited a powder keg. Human forces, enraged by the attacks, demanded retribution. Zyrian militias, convinced of an imminent invasion, mobilized en masse. Green found himself caught in the crossfire, literally and figuratively. He ducked behind a low wall as energy bolts sizzled overhead, the acrid smell of ozone filling his nostrils. "This has to stop," he shouted into his comm. "We're playing right into Taxor's hands." But reason had long since fled. Green watched in horror as human dropships strafed Zyrian positions, while militia forces sabotaged critical infrastructure. In the chaos, Taxor made his move. Green barely registered the high-pitched whine of an incoming projectile before Zara slammed into him. They tumbled to the ground as the world erupted in fire and shrapnel. When the ringing in his ears subsided, Green found Zara cradled in his arms, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "No," he whispered, his hands slick with her blood. "No, no, no." Zara's eyes locked onto his, a lifetime of unspoken words passing between them in an instant. "Don't let this be for nothing," she managed. "Break the cycle, Eugene. Your presence here, it's become a symbol. As long as you stay—" Her voice trailed off as her eyes closed for the final time. Green clutched her body, a primal scream of grief and rage tearing from his throat. Hours blurred into days as Green threw himself into brokering a ceasefire. He worked tirelessly alongside Rayuz, leveraging what influence he had left to bring the warring factions to the table. "It's not perfect," Rayuz said, examining the hastily drawn partition plan, "but it may be enough to prevent total collapse." Green nodded wearily. "Sometimes that's the best we can hope for." As the last human evacuation shuttle prepared for departure, Green stood at the base of the ramp. He watched as Zyrian work crews began the long process of rebuilding, while in the distance the glow of Taxor's separatist strongholds served as a constant reminder of the fragility of peace. Commander Norwood approached, his face etched with concern. "Are you sure about this, Green? There's still a place for you with us." Green shook his head. "My presence here will only inflame tensions. It's time for the Zyrians to chart their own course." As the shuttle's engines roared to life, Green took one last look at the world he had fought so hard to liberate. The scars of conflict ran deep, and he knew the road ahead would be long and treacherous. But as the ground fell away and Velos Prime shrank to a distant orb, Green allowed himself a small measure of hope. Perhaps in time, the wounds of the past could begin to heal.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.